Morning, guys. Today's May 4th, and this is your lesson for multiplying fractions by whole numbers today. So unit fractions are a fraction with a numerator of 1. They have any denominator. This is an example of how repeated addition is related to multiplication. So 5 times 1/4 is the same as saying 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. And you get that 5/4. You can see how that's represented on the number line, where you have 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, and 1/4 again, and that brings you to 5/4. And you can see how 5/4 is equivalent to 1 whole and 1 extra 1/4, so that's 1 and 1/4. And same thing for the model down here. 1/4 5 times. If you took 4 of them, you would fill in 1 whole, and then you'd have 1 extra piece. All right, so today I can use drawings, models, or number lines to multiply a fraction by a whole number. Our solve and share is how much tomato juice is needed for a group of 4 people if each person gets 1/3 cup of juice. How much tomato juice is needed if they get 2/3 cups of juice. Solve this problem any way you choose. Well, we're going to do it together. Okay, and here's our friend. He's thinking. He says you can use drawings or write equations to model with math. Okay, so that's our goal, is using that stuff to model with math. So I'm thinking to myself, well, 4 people, they each get 1/3 cup. So that means I have the same group, same number in each group. So I have 4 groups, 1/3 is in each. So I can multiply 4 times 1/3 and I can get 4/3. When I turn that into a mixed number, I get 1 and 1/3 cups. And you can see here I laid out our drawing, and I have 4 1/3, and 3 of those 1/3 equal 1 whole. How do I know that? Because the denominator is 3, and to have all of it, I'd need 3 pieces. And then I have that 1 extra piece of 1/3. So if I need to do 2/3, I think to myself, okay, well, 4 times 2/3, 4 times 2 is 8. I use my denominator of a 3, and I get 8/3. And then I'm going to take that and put it into a mixed number again. And I get 2 and 2/3. So how's multiplying 4 and 2/3 the same as multiplying 8 and 1/3? Well, think about it. You need 2 4s to fit into 1 8, right? So 4 groups of 2/3 is the same amount of juice as 2 groups of 1/3, because 4 times 2 is 8 and 8 times 1 is 8, and they're both over that 3 as the denominator. This is where that understanding multiplication and how it's related is important, and that you need 2 sets of 4 to get to 8, right? So it's 4 times 2. So here's our learning videos. We'll just take a look really quick.
How can you find the product of a fraction multiplied by a whole number? Think about this question during the lesson. Dory lives 1/4 mile from school. If she walks to and from school each day, how far does Dory walk during a school week? Dory lives 1/4 mile from school. How many times a week does Dory walk the 1/4 mile between home and school?
Select your answer.
All right, so it says Dory lives 1/4 mile from school. How many times a week does Dory walk the 1/4 mile between home and school? How many times? So let's think. 1, 2 a day, right? So it says how many times a week. If you have to do it twice a day, there's 5 days in a week. 2 times 5 gives us 10.
10 times. You need to find the total distance Dory walks during a school week. What units will you use for your answer? You will use miles. You can use addition or multiplication to solve this problem. Why can you use multiplication to solve the problem?
So how can we use multiplication to solve the problem? Let's think about that. If I have 1/4 and I have it 10 times, it's the same amount in each section, right? And what do we say about multiplication? You can use multiplication when you have the same amount in each group, right?
Dory makes 10 trips and all the trips are the same length. You can draw a picture to show the distance Dory walks. How does the picture represent the problem?
So how does the picture represent the problem? Well, let's see. We have 1/4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? So each yellow piece represents 1/4. So let's check that out. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So she did it 10 times. She walked 10/4.
The diagram shows the 1/4 mile Dory walks 10 times. 10 1/4 miles added together equals 10/4 miles. Write 10/4 as a mixed number.
10/4 as a mixed number.
4 1/4 mile trips equals 1 mile. 10/4 equals 4/4 plus 4/4 plus 2/4. So 10/4 equals 1 plus 1 plus 2/4, or 2 2/4. 2 2/4 is equivalent to 2 1/2. Dory walks 2 1/2 miles to and from school each week. You can also draw a number line to show the distance Dory walks. How does the number line represent the problem?
Right, so how does the number line represent the problem? Well, we did 10 hops, right, until we got to 10/4. So to school to home, to school to home, to school to home, to school to home, to school, and back to home on Friday, right? So I did that 10 times.
Like the drawing, it shows the 1/4 mile Dory walks 10 times. 10 times 1/4 equals the quantity 10 times 4/4, which equals 10/4.
Remember, 1/4 is a unit fraction, so 10 1/4 parts are 10/4.
Write 10/4 as a mixed number. 10/4 equals 2 2/4, or 2 1/2. Dory walks 2 1/2 miles to and from school each week. Now you know how you can find the product of a fraction multiplied by a whole number.
All right, so that was a lot of information. So let's check out one more video real quick.
We get it. You don't really want your kids watching videos, but
Sorry,
you can
always
have
an ad,
certain
right? So let's skip that ad.
I was running 8 miles away. I had already run 3/4 of the way to find how far I'd traveled from my front door. I did 8 times 3 and got 24. Then I divided by 4 and I got 6. 6 miles I'd run in my brand new kicks.
Multiplying whole numbers by fractions is awesome, yeah. When there's a similar problem, we'll not have forgotten.
Multiply by the top, divide by the bottom, multiply by the top, divide by the bottom.
I was riding to the video game shop. I had ridden 5, 6, 12 city blocks. How far I box and did a cool bike trick.
Multiplying whole numbers by fractions is awesome. Yeah, when there's a similar problem, we'll not have forgotten.
Multiply by the top, divide by the bottom, multiply by the top, divide by the bottom.
The girl used repeated addition to see if she could use the strategy to solve a half times 3. She thought fast and then it came like a flash that a half plus a half is 3 halves. She converted 3 halves to 1 1/2. She had a crush that would last. It was a crush on math.
Multiplying whole numbers by fractions is awesome. Yeah, when there's a similar problem, we'll not have forgotten.
Multiply by the top, divide by the bottom, multiply by the top, divide by the bottom.
I was running 8 miles away.
All right,
Have
guys.
fun
So
and learn math at the same
that's
time with
what we
Adapted
did
Mind.
with that one. So let's go back and check out the other link that we have real quick. All right.
How do you use a number line to multiply a whole number and a fraction? In this lesson, you will learn to multiply a whole number and a fraction by using a number line. Let's review. A number line can be divided into equal parts. This number line shows the distance between 0 and 2, and each whole number is divided into 4 equal distances. We can see that 4/4 represents the same distance as 1 whole, and 8/4 represents the same distance as 2. Because we divided our number line into fourths, each distance represents 1/4. We also want to keep in mind that each 1/4 is called a unit fraction.
All right, so there's that vocabulary
We can use a
word.
number line to multiply a whole number times a fraction.
So this is
Before we
equivalent
do,
to
let's
2/5.
look more closely at what it actually means to multiply 3 times 2/5.
2/5.
3 times 2/5 is 3 sets with 2/5 in each set. 2/5 can also be broken down into unit fractions. 3 times 2/5 is the same as 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5,
And then how many do we
which
have?
equals
2,
6/5.
2, and then 2, and it
Now
equals
let's use a
6.
number line to solve 3 times 2/5. In earlier grades, you learned to skip count. For example, you can skip count by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Same thing, except you're putting it over a denominator.
We're going to skip count on the number line by 2/5. Every 2/5 tick mark is really 1/5 plus 1/5. So here we go. 2/5, 4/5, 6/5. Notice that we skip counted 3 times because we're multiplying by 3. We're on the 6/5 point, and that's the solution to 3 times 2/5. 3 times 2/5 can be written and solved in different ways. For example, 3 times 2/5 can be written as 2/5 plus 2/5 plus 2/5, which equals 6/5. On the number line, each blue arrow represents the distance 1/5 plus 1/5, or 2/5. We can solve 3 times 2/5 by writing each 2/5 as 1/5 plus 1/5.
All right, so I think you guys got the gist of it with this. So now after you've watched those videos, here's the convince me. And you can watch those videos as many times as you need to make sure that you understand what's going on. So it says, why can both addition and multiplication be used to represent the problem above, right? So this is our problem from our convince me. And you can see that we use addition and multiplication. And while I was talking through the video with you, I said something that was very key, and it was called equal groups, right? So it says addition or multiplication can be used when you are joining equal-sized groups, and that's key for multiplication, right? We have 4 groups, 3 in each, okay? We have 10 groups with 1/4 in each. It's all the same. So you can see here it says 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4, and it does it 10 times, and that's the same as saying 10 times the 1/4. So instead of adding repeated, you're using that multiplication strategy. All right, so draw a picture to explain why 3 times 2/5 and 6 times 1/5 is the same. Well, in that video that we just watched, it tells you that 2 1/5 is equivalent to 2/5, and they fit into that 2/5 area, okay? So the 2/5 is equivalent to the 2 1/5 together, and this shows that 3 times 2/5, sorry, that's my dog playing with a toy in the background. 3 times 2/5 is equivalent to 6/5, and then 6 times 1/5 is also equivalent to 6/5. Now, on our number line, we have write and solve a multiplication equation. I have 2 pies here, 2 slices in each out of 6 slices. So it's 2 times 2, 6, and I have 4 6 left. Okay, on the bottom on the number line, I'm jumping and skip counting by 2s. And that means I jumped 4 times, and there's 2/3 in each, so it's 4 times 2/3. Or I can have 1/3, and I jumped 8 times, and it's 8/3, and they both equal 2 and 2/3. All right, so you guys are going to work on the practice buddy under your classes. You'll do reflex until you hit that green light, and then make sure your IXL diagnostic is pinpointed. If not, work on it for 10 minutes. And that's it for today. If you have any questions, post it on the math board.